across the border in Moscow. The Moscow Times, an English language Russian newspaper with a reputation for being independent. It can be quite critical of the Putin regime, or Putin government rather. It has in-depth coverage of it. On the cover, the opposition, Sergei Lavrov says the opposition must honour the deal struck last Friday. He says a range of rogue roughnecks is refusing to hand over weapons. And inside the Moscow Times, there's a counterpoint on Ukraine. The American-Russia expert John Quigley says the people of Ukraine should have the ultimate choice of what happens in the country, while Ben Aris, the Moscow-based editor of Business New Europe, says that while Viktor Yanukovych was undoubtedly corrupt, he had little choice but to turn to Moscow because they were giving far more money than the EU was willing to give in aid. And Aris said that what the EU was giving was not enough to service the Ukraine's debt. On the same page, former US State Department official Josh Cohen speculates on Russia seizing Crimea, which is a majority Russian-speaking region of Ukraine. Now, that was historically part of Russia, but was granted to Ukraine in 1954 by then Soviet First Secretary Nikita Khrushchev. And Russia currently has a Black Sea fleet stationed in the Crimean port of Sebastopol. Cohen says that if Ukraine turns decisively west, it may well find it is forced to leave Crimea behind.
Right. Well, we've also been looking at what's happening with Yulia Tymoshenko. She was the Prime Minister who was jailed a couple of years ago, released from prison at the weekend. She's been hailed by the Ukrainian opposition, very symbolic figure, but she does have a bit of a checkered past, and that's been brought out in some of the papers, hasn't it?
That's right. Christopher Dickey in the Daily Beast weighs in. He says the former Prime Minister, who was released on Saturday, is no angel. He says, and I quote, "Don't let her looks fool you. The woman of the moment in Ukraine, whose crown of braided golden hair is calculated to evoke mythical memories of rural strength, has always been a better icon than a politician." Now, Tymoshenko herself acknowledged previous mistakes in her speech on Saturday night. Now, Dickey says that while the charges that sent her to prison were politically motivated, there's much about her past that, particularly her links to disgraced Prime Minister Pavlo Lazarenko, that really is pretty much in the shadows. And the article also suggests her famous golden braids are part of a concerted makeover to put space between her dark-haired, dark 90s past when she made a meteoric rise to fame and fortune with cutting lucrative energy deals.
Wow, very symbolic stuff there. Let's move on from Ukraine, though, to Mexico. Big news there at the weekend that the country's most wanted man, a drug cartel head, was arrested. I imagine this has been quite warmly welcomed, this news, over the border in the US.
Indeed, it is. And The Guardian reports that US Attorney General Eric Holder is to seek Joaquin Guzman's extradition. Guzman, also known as El Chapo, is blamed for up to 90% of the drug trade in cities such as Chicago.
90%?
80%, I beg your pardon.
Even so.
Yeah, it's still a sizable number. He'll face a number of charges in the US if extradited. Mexico may not want to let him go. The Mexican ambassador to Washington has already said he should face trial at home. They have no shortage of things to charge him with there, and the Sinaloa cartel has been implicated in the deaths of tens of thousands of people in Mexico's decade-long sometimes grisly drug wars. The story naturally was front page news on all of Mexico's papers on Sunday, with La Jornada's front page headline a single word, cayó, or fallen. And while El Universal reports that Guzman's home in the Pacific coastal city of Mazatlan has already been attracting tourists, its headline says his lair has turned into a tourist attraction, with curious holidaymakers taking pictures of the house. Now, neighbours say they had no idea who was living quietly in their midst, and now they're worried that the rival Zeta cartel might try to muscle in on El Chapo's territory.
Gosh, dramatic stuff. Finally, just time for a quick word about the end of the Sochi Games.
Yes, the Western media has been poking a lot of fun at Russia's malfunction during the Games, but Sarah Lyle of the New York Times is quite generous. She says that worries about terrorist attacks did not materialise. Russia ended the Games with most of the medals, and even the closing ceremony, which showcased Russian culture, ballet and literature, was actually quite flamboyant and exciting. And there was even a sly nod to the cock-up of the opening ceremony when one of the Olympic rings did fail to light. So she says that for a brief period at least, things looked up, and overnight the mood in Russia shifted from a kind of grumbling fatalism to a burst of national pride.
Yeah, people do tend to be very negative about Russia sometimes, don't they? Thanks very much for bringing us that roundup of the international newspaper headlines. Oliver Farry there with our press review. We're going to take a very short break here on Live from Paris, but when we come back, we'll have the latest for you from Ukraine, including breaking news. The ousted Ukrainian President Yanukovych is officially wanted by police. The acting Interior Minister has said that an arrest warrant has been issued. President Yanukovych is believed to have fled to Crimea, one of his eastern regions where he has most support. We'll bring you the latest on that after this short break. Do stay with us.